Welcome back to Empowered. I'm Elizabeth Nomofsky. On today's episode, we're discussing dating a narcissist. And before we went to commercial break, Maria, we're talking about the similarities between dating a narcissist and a romance scammer as well. So did he actually pull you away from your family and friends as well so that you just kept everything that you went through inside?
It's interesting because, when you're being gaslit, it really is kind of that emotional abuse where you're manipulated in a way. And what was interesting was he actually would pull in my mother and just really charm the socks off her too. So it was interesting because I wasn't really pulled away. Everyone was pulled in to see what I saw. And so it was like, oh, we'd love him. We'd love the situation. I mean, I had a few friends that were like, wow, this is really insane. And what are you doing? And give your head a shake. But the people that were closest to me were also charmed as well. So it was just a very interesting space to be in, almost to the point of when everything went down and I kind of had enough strength to leave. My mother would question me because he was so good to her and she saw the greatest of the great. So I got questioned at the time again, of what I was thinking when, she just couldn't believe it because she was also a little bit manipulated. So not isolated in the sense where I was taking away, but, those that were closest to me would see the best of the best.
So, okay, let's move on to red flags. What are the red flags that people should be looking out for when they're dating a narcissist?
Yeah, I feel that, like you mentioned, in anything that's scam related, if your intuition is tingling, if your guts are telling you something, I think you should stand up or sit up and listen because you're going between, those two different emotions of being adored, the center of someone's universe, to now being not good enough. So I think when you see those fluctuations all the time and you can't make heads or tails of it, that is a big red flag that maybe you should be questioning the relationship. And so, when everything is in your best interest and that's what you're led to believe all the time, even when something is as crazy as someone breaking into your house and you're like, that's cute.
Okay,
You're
that's not
told that's
cute.
because
Somebody breaking into
it's
your
not.
house is not cute.
It's not cute. But when you're told, that it's in your better interest, I was worried about you, I was all these things, you're like, oh, and so you just don't see the red flags at the time. So, but when those fluctuations are happening, I think that's a telltale sign and that's big red flags, that something is going on.
So you also talk about self-doubt.
Yeah.
You experience things, but maybe they didn't happen that way, but maybe they did. It was almost like gaslighting. You talked about gaslighting earlier.
Yeah.
What would you say to anyone who is experiencing something about that right now? The self-doubt, did it happen? Did it not happen? Is it really happening? Am I fabricating it? What are your words of wisdom to help someone?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of us go into relationships. We're strong individuals. We know the difference between right and wrong. So, when you keep self questioning and self doubting yourself, I think, you really have to stop for a minute and really do a lot of self reflection. You have to look at yourself, do some self awareness and kind of check in with yourself. And I think that's really the most important thing is being like, okay, no, I have had a lot of experience in my own life, not doubting myself, understanding myself, creating, this independent person. And when that starts fleeting and being chipped away, then I would really, start questioning a lot of things. And I would give that advice to a lot of people because you weren't always that way.
So, okay, I read your book, and the
Yes,
book
thank you.
reveals a lot about you. And there are some very explicit details that you share in the book. How does sharing as much make you feel?
I was terrified and I thought long and hard before I shared as much. And I was going to leave a few of the 50 Shades kind of stories out of there. The reason it was so important is because at some point in the relationship, I thought it was the only thing I can control. And so if I left those things out, if I left the story out, it wouldn't be a complete story, because it was so important that that is where I felt I can control the situation. And I think a lot of women feel the same way. I mean, I was terribly wrong, but it also felt very freeing to me. It felt good to be vulnerable. It felt good to be honest. And it felt good to tell the story as it really was. And so if I did skip out a few, details, I don't think that anyone would understand the full story of it.
Hold that thought. We'll be right back.